Hey guys, welcome to What If. Angelo Besso was a very close friend of Albert Einstein when he was at the Federal Polytechnic Institute in Zurich and then at the patent office in Bern. Besso died when he was aged 81. In a letter to Besso's family, Albert Einstein said, "Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." And guys, Einstein died 1 month and 3 days after this, on 18th of April 1955. Isn't it strange? Einstein clearly mentioned in his words that death is just an illusion of our consciousness. What if, guys, he was telling us the truth of our existence? What if death really is an illusion? Guys, we understand this world or become conscious to this world majorly on our 5 senses, that are on what we see, on what we hear, on what we taste, on what we smell, and on what we feel. These are all inputs to our system on which we understand the surrounding around us. And it's crazy, guys, but we have limitations to our senses. Like we can hear sounds only between 20 Hz to 20 kHz. We cannot see infrared, ultraviolet, gamma and various different rays. We cannot guess what happens beyond these wavelengths of light. Similar to all these things, there are many more things to which we don't have any answer. And death is one of these things. An American medical doctor and scientist, Robert Lange, came up with a new theory of biocentric universe. He has mentioned this concept in his book Biocentrism. In his book, he mentions the famous double-slit experiment that when a scientist watches a particle pass through 2 slits in a barrier, the particle behaves like a bullet and goes through one slit or the other. But if you don't watch the particle, it acts like a wave and can go through both the slits at the same time. So how can a particle change its behavior depending on whether we watch it or not? This is because reality is a process that involves our consciousness. In quantum physics, entangled particles remain connected so that actions performed on one affect the other, even when separated by a greater distance. Einstein termed them as spooky actions at a distance. Consider Heisenberg's famous uncertainty principle. If we really have a world out there with particles just bouncing around, then we should be able to measure all their properties. But we can't. A particle's exact location and momentum cannot be found at the same time. So why does it matter for a particle on what you decide to measure? And how pairs of entangled particles be instantaneously connected on opposite sides of the galaxy, as if space and time do not exist? The answer to this is very simple, because they are not just out there. Guys, space and time exist because our conscious mind says they exist, or our conscious mind is programmed in such a way that we believe that it exists. Science has progressed a lot in the past decade, and depending upon that, we have concluded total 10 dimensions on the basis of string theory. I will discuss with you about the 11th dimension later in this video. Guys, we get the first dimension as length, which can be described as a straight line. Now, when we add another line perpendicular to the first one, we get the second dimension, generally called as height. The third dimension involves depth and gives all objects a sense of area and cross-section. We live in this third dimension, and hence we can easily understand second as well as first dimension. scientists believe the fourth dimension as time, which governs all the properties of known matter at a given point. It can be simply said that fourth dimension is the position in time occupied by a third dimensional object. Tesseract is the three-dimensional representation of the fourth dimension. The fifth dimension is a world slightly different than ours, from which we could measure similarities and differences to our own world. In the sixth dimension, we could probably see a world where we compare and position all the possible universes that start with the same initial conditions. We can consider here all the things that originated with us in the Big Bang. Guys, understanding these next dimensions is little complicated. I have tried my hard to make it more simple for you to understand. In the seventh dimension, we consider both the possible worlds that start with same and different initial condition. The eighth dimension again consists of a plane of the possible universes, each of which begins with a different initial condition and branches out infinitely. The ninth dimension consists of all the possible worlds starting with all possible start conditions and laws of physics. In each of these dimensions, which represent all possible start conditions, the laws of physics are completely different. Now we arrive to the 10th dimension. This is the dimension where all our imagination ends. Nothing can be imagined beyond this. In this dimension, we arrive at a point where everything is possibly covered. Guys, now speaking about the 11th dimension, the existence of these 10 dimensions is supposed to be on the basis of strings or waves. So the question arises, from where do these strings come from? So in the M theory, there is an 11th dimension, also called as the energy dimension, from where we consider the strings may have been originated. Guys, through all this, can we say that death is traveling through dimensions? We live in a three-dimensional world, and we know that when our body dies, it is said that our soul still exists, which has no time limitation. Hence, it can be considered that when someone dies in the third dimension, we enter the fourth dimension and overcome the barrier of time, which we had in the third dimension. In 1884, Edwin Abbott published a book on the fictional two-dimensional world, which he called as Flatland, and the beings living in the flatland as Flatlanders. What if, guys, they are real? And what if when a Flatlander dies, he overcomes the barrier of depth and acquires a 3D state and originates into a 3D world, which we can assume as a dimensional travel? This is the main point, guys. We never die. We just overcome the barrier between the dimensions and move further. The energy in the universe always remains constant, and hence depth can't be the end of the energy that we possess. Thank you guys for watching this video, and guys, if you have any queries regarding the content in this video, then please do comment your queries, and please do subscribe What If.